Imagine getting up every day full of energy as if you were in your 20s again. What would that be like? What would it be worth to you? What is your health worth to you? Think about it. Your health isn't everything, but without it, everything else is nothing. And yet, too many of us are taking it for granted until something goes wrong. And no one wakes up hoping to be diagnosed with a disease or chronic illness. And yet, we've never been taught how to be proactive in our health through our school or public health. As a registered health coach and integrative health practitioner, I believe it's time this information is made available to everyone. Combining new knowledge around your health and the ability to do my functional medicine lab tests in the comfort of your own home will allow you to optimize your health for today and all your tomorrows. Don't wait for your wake-up call. Welcome back to another episode of the Don't Wait for Your Wake-Up Call podcast. I am here today with Susan Brady. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Melissa, so much. I'm so excited to be here with you and to talk about my favorite topic, bones.
And I'm excited to have you on the show because I have never had somebody come onto the show to talk about your favorite topic of bones before. So this will be all new information for my audience. And I just want to introduce you to my audience. Susan Brady is a seasoned healthcare professional with a rich background in physical therapy, integrative medicine, and nutrition. After earning her Master of Physical Therapy from the University of Southern California, she began her career treating a wide range of musculoskeletal disorders. During her early years in physical therapy, Susan discovered the profound impact of a holistic approach through her work, which led her to pursue further studies in integrative medicine and obtain certificates in nutrition and holistic health. So, Susan, I'm going to just stop there because I would love to have you share your story in your own words as to where that has taken you into this passion that you have for bones and helping people maintain healthy bones. So how did you get started in this?
Well, I did start as a physical therapist, and I've always been health conscious and an athletic, and so that's why I went into physical therapy. But then I started noticing that it was my patients that actually took good care of themselves, ate right, slept, stress reduction. Those are the ones that actually healed faster and more completely. So that I, really started to look into the connection between nutrition and stress reduction and healthy lifestyle in regards to healing injuries. Now, this was back in 1989, so there wasn't a lot of connection back then between nutrition and healing.
Or nutrition
so I started
and anything, really.
Exactly. And what was kind of interesting was I was working for a very well-renowned rheumatologist, and a patient of mine came in. She said, "You know what? When I don't eat sugar or wheat, my inflammation goes away and I don't have pain. But as soon as I eat sugar again, I have pain." And we're all looking at her like, "Yeah, right." But again, this is 1989.
Right.
And what was interesting was she started a sugar-free, gluten-free bakery company in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And she wasn't a patient for much longer because she was able to take care of her pain and symptoms through just eliminating wheat and sugar. So that was pretty cool.
And
So I went on and
awareness on her part as well to figure that out for herself and
yes.
planted a seed for you in, there might be something to this. I love that.
Yes. So then I went on and went through my integrative health and nutrition practice. And when I first opened my practice, I was a jack of all trades, seeing everybody from weight loss to diabetes to arthritis and everything. But I started to get an influx of women coming to me with osteoporosis, concerned about the medications, the bone medications. And, they didn't want to go on these medications. The doctor said, "Oh, you had to." They went and Googled it. They saw all these side effects and they wanted a more holistic approach. And after a while of all these women coming in, I'm thinking, I better start to learn a little bit more about this. And even though I had the basics, anyway, I really dove in deep, read everything I could read about, bone health and exercise and nutrition and digestion, and decided that it was a great area for me to actually marry my professions. My profession is being a physical therapist,
Mhm.
as well as being an integrative healthcare practitioner and a nutritionist. And so that's when I then started to specialize in bone health and in osteoporosis. And during my research, I found that there were 5 key pillars to building bone health naturally. One was nutrition, one was digestion, one was absolutely nurture. I call it nurturing the soul through stress reduction and quality sleep. Obviously, exercise is important, and then smart supplementation. And as we know, you can't just go out and start supplementing with all of these different nutrients because everything has to be in balance within itself. So that's what I've been doing ever since. I think I kind of started focusing back in 2014, so 10 years ago. And that's kind of the lens that I both evaluate all of my patients through, this 5 pillars, as well as then go on to treat them.
I love your story, and I love how you've been able to marry together
Mm.
your initial training as a physical therapist and then that interest that came to you as a result of all of these clients coming
Mm-hmm.
and not wanting to be on pharmaceutical drugs for the rest of their
Mm-hmm.
life.
Right.
And that you created that niche for yourself and have now been doing it for 10 years and helping myriads of people. Like you just don't even know the ripple effect of the people that you've helped, because what you share and teach to people, they are then out and talking to others, at different networking events and cocktail parties and family events and saying, oh, this is what I'm doing, da 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 da. And then other people will just start doing it without even, seeing you, because it makes so much sense. Our
Well, I think,
body is designed to heal, and people have more awareness now around the impact of nutrition,
mhm.
toxicity, exercise, lifestyle, sleep, stress, etc. And so this is brilliant. I love it. I
Well,
love it.
and I also truly believe that, we are an integrated system, and anything
Mm,
that we do to advance our bone health is going to advance the health of your entire body. I like to say that there's no cell that is an island of its own. Every cell affects every other cell in the body. So whatever you do to, strengthen your bones is going to help, tremendously your health in general.
exactly, exactly. When the body heals, it doesn't just go, oh, I'm just going to heal the heart right now. What we
Yes.
do to heal the heart, it benefits all of the body, the same as when we focus on our bones, it benefits all of the body. So
Yes.
you have an acronym, BONES,
Hmm.
which is beautiful. And is BONES your acronym for your 5 pillars that you mentioned earlier?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So B stands for balanced nutrition, O optimized digestion, N nurture the soul, E essential exercise, and S smart supplementation.
Beautiful. I missed the balanced nutrition before because I
Hmm.
picked up on the rest and I'm like, where's the B? Because I just heard the nutrition part. So yeah, BONES, that's such a great acronym to help people easily remember the
Hmm.
5 steps to focus on
Hmm.
for bone health and total health.
Hmm.
I love it. I love it. So tell me more, because I know that our bones are deep within our body. And so people often don't think about them.
Mm.
And I know we have sayings like use it or lose it when it comes to our brain or our muscles, etc. Does the same apply with our bones?
Absolutely. Especially exercise is essential. And I'm a nutritionist and integrative healthcare practitioner. But in my personal opinion, when it comes to bone health, exercise is absolutely number one, because there's something called Wolff's Law. And so when you put a stress on a structure, it it will automatically heal by getting stronger. It's this, it's the same concept of lifting weights. When you're lifting weights, and you're stressing the muscle gets stronger. When you stress the bones get stronger. And, we have been in a society, where people don't necessarily exercise all the time. They sit behind desks all day long. They're tired when they get home. They don't exercise. And I think that's why we've actually seen such an increased rate of osteoporosis over the last several years, is because we've been more and more sedentary. But you have to stress your bones in order for them to stay strong. And you can stress them a couple different ways. One is through actual mechanical stress. Every time your foot hits the ground, it sends a mechanical stress up that bone, up the leg bone, which then dissipates through the whole spine and causes the bone turnover. But also by doing resistance training, so either through weightlifting or resistance bands or body weight exercises, every time you contract that muscle, the muscle pulls on the bone, and that then causes the bone to get stronger. And the other really cool thing is, when you contract your muscle, it secretes a hormone called irisin. And irisin literally talks to the bone. Well, I guess not literally, figuratively talks to the bone and tells the bone to get stronger. And it kind of makes sense, because if the muscle's getting stronger, the bone has to get stronger. Because if the bone doesn't get stronger and now you're lifting 50 pounds and the bone isn't equipped to take that stress, it's going to fracture. So when I think about osteoporosis, I don't look at it as a condition of the skeletal system. I look at it as a condition of the muscular skeletal condition. And your muscles are just as important in maintaining bone strength as the actual structure of the bone is.
Because it all comes back to us being interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
You can't separate the muscle from the bone and the bone from the muscle, etc., because they work together and they're intertwined.
Yes. And they have to be.
Exactly. It's how we're built in order to be able to function. So a few questions there, and a comment. I hear people saying in recent years that sitting is the new smoking. And so to your point, because we are sitting at desks for so much of our day and not moving, that is now the cause for many of our illnesses, where smoking potentially was before. People knew smoking was bad for them, and initially they didn't, then they finally figured it out. We've got rid of smoking to a large degree, and now the sitting is the biggest problem, and that sedentary lifestyle, because our frames were never built for that. And there's so much that we can do even when we're in an office all day. So I'm at a standing desk right now, standing on a walking pad, which I'm not walking on right now because I am recording a podcast. However, my next meeting is a networking meeting. And so I will be walking through the networking meeting to just have some movement in my day, on a day where I don't have a lot of time to go outside and, go for a walk for an hour. I can do it while working. And, this stand-up desk and the walking pad are not expensive items to have and to add. And they can make a significant difference in our health. When I am sitting, I sit on a ball rather than a chair, because then I'm also wiggling and using core muscles and moving around, etc. So these are all little things that we can do to support ourselves if we are in an office type job, and we're not outside, as a construction worker or some kind of outdoor farm labor, etc., which many of us are not anymore. These are things that we can do in order to help ourselves. And those are some of the lifestyle changes I'm sure you talk to people about as well.
Absolutely. So I'll often tell people, when you're sitting at your desk and you're getting up to go to the bathroom, and if they're in an office building, use the bathroom on a different floor and take the stairs. right? Or, get up, go to the bathroom and circle the hallways a little bit. Or when you come back to sit at your desk, just stand up and sit down 10 times. Just small little things that you can do throughout the day. And then also in terms of impact, we do these things called heel drops where you come up on your toes and then you drop your heels down and it creates that impact. You can do that while you're cooking dinner, watching a pile, your pot boil or something cooking. Little things that you can do all day long, but it has to become, a mindset and, like you said, a lifestyle change. And the only way that we make these lifestyle change is by consistently doing something and making them a habit. And so, even when it comes to exercise, I tell people, leave your sneakers right there, in your bathroom. So the first thing you do in the morning when you go into the bathroom, your sneakers are there, and that's going to remind you, I should go exercise. And what's
And
also kind of interesting is the timing of exercise.
mhm.
So, our bones have a circadian rhythm, that 24-hour clock that our bodies function on. And so it's during the nighttime that our bones break down, and it's during the daytime that our bones build up. So actually exercising in the morning, you'll get more bang for your buck because that's when the bones are building up and that's when you're exercising. So there is some research to say that exercising in the morning is more beneficial than exercising later in the day when it comes to building bone.
I never knew that before. And I love that because I like to exercise in the morning. And there's other reasons to exercise in the morning. Another being, when you exercise too late at night and it's too close to bedtime, you're again out of your circadian rhythm. It's hard for the body to be producing melatonin, and because you've got your hormones running through your body and your adrenals are hopped up a little bit because of the exercise, and then it takes time to calm the body and have cortisol drop low enough that melatonin can be produced so you can get into a deep sleep. So I knew that reason. I didn't know that it was actually because your bones are building up in the morning. And so
Yeah.
exercise during that time is a great
Yeah.
time to exercise.
And I also find that people that exercise in the morning tend to stick with it, opposed to exercising later in the day, because there's way too many excuses at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Whereas there are, fewer excuses in the morning.
That's why I do it in the morning, because just get up and get it done. And you've looked after yourself for the day. And then the rest of the day is no matter what happens, at least you've taken care of yourself, which is
Yes.
the focus here. We have to first
Mhm.
take care of ourselves before we can look after everybody else. And so this is a part of doing that.
Mm-hmm. I
So,
always liked hearing people talk about, when you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks
mhm,
drop, you put your oxygen mask on first, and then you help your children or whoever, is with you. And, when you
exactly.
think about it that way, it just, I think that helps people realize how important it is to take care of ourselves, because especially as women and as mothers, we are so giving and we're always worried about everybody else in our life and always, helping everybody else. And I know that, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. If you don't make enough dinner one night, guess who gets the least amount of food? It's always the mom, right? And not that I would ever take food away from my children, but we do have to take care of ourselves because we are no good to anybody else if we don't take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. And there's a societal programming that's happened that we have to look after everybody else first. And only if there's time after looking after everybody else can we look after ourselves. And I know I was very much raised in that societal programming. And it wasn't until I got into health coaching where I actually was at a conference and I heard them say, self care is the most selfless act. And I went, huh? And kind of like the emoji of the little puppy dog ears and went, what? I need to hear that again. And they literally said it again. Self care is the most selfless act. Wow. And they went on to explain it. And for me to shift my habits in order to step into looking after myself, at the time I had two teenage girls, they're now adults. And I made a mantra for myself. which started off with that statement: self-care is the most selfless act because it allows me to show up and give the world the best of me instead of what's left of me.
And I think also for, for us that have young women, um, women, young
Mhm.
women, children, really important to set that example,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because
exactly.
they learn from us.
Exactly.
And, if they see that we're not taking care of ourselves, what are we teaching them?
Mhm.
Right? And so, sometimes it is important to be selfish, but also I think it's important that we set the example for the next generation. And I don't think that my mom necessarily did that.
Exactly. And as we set that for the next generation, that's how we change the programming.
Mm-hmm.
That we do get to care for ourselves first, because that is the only way that we can actually show up and care for everybody else. You can't serve from an empty cup.
No.
So, yeah. So, getting back to osteoporosis and bone health, most people know that, vitamin C and vitamin D are important nutrients. What else is needed in order to maintain, excuse me, maintain strong, healthy bones?
I think for years it's been all about calcium, calcium, calcium. And then, all of a sudden, it's so funny in the nutrition world because then all of a sudden we recognize vitamin D. And so now everything is about vitamin D and everybody has to be taking vitamin D. But the truth is that our bones need over 20 different nutrients, and calcium and vitamin D can't work properly in the body without these co-nutrients too that are really, really important are vitamin K2 and magnesium, because it's the vitamin K2 and the magnesium that actually allows the calcium into the bones and helps the calcium be used to build the stronger bones. But you also need so many, different ones. I mean, boron is another one that's really critical. Zinc, selenium, phosphorus. You mentioned vitamin C, very, very important. So it's not just about, popping those calcium supplements that the doctors have been telling us to take for years and years and years. And in fact, what we found is that taking all of this supplemental calcium has led to, I don't want to say 100%, but we're seeing increased risk of cardiovascular disease secondary to possibly taking all of this calcium, because the calcium is not getting into the bones. It's precipitating out into the blood vessels and causing calcium plaques. So,
Interesting
we're
that you
constantly.
say that. And I'm just going to interrupt you there simply because I did have a guest on the podcast earlier this year. It was episode 169, where she was talking exactly about that and the
Mhm,
importance of K2
mhm.
to help move that calcium that's built up in the arteries out of the arteries and back into the bones.
Yes,
And so,
yes.
as you say, there's so many nutrients that people can be taking. And what we know to be true about the body is it's everything in balance.
Mhm.
Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. And we see that
Yes.
in so many areas within how our body functions. And this is a classic example.
Mhm. And we're seeing that right now with vitamin D.
Mm.
We're finding there are studies coming out now that's showing too much supplemental vitamin D is just as detrimental as having too little vitamin D. And
Mm.
I think back years ago, and they're probably still doing it now, when physicians are prescribing 50,000 IUs of vitamin D when somebody has a vitamin D deficiency. And I've always thought, how can somebody even process 50,000 IUs of vitamin D at one time? It
Mm.
just doesn't make sense to me. But now we're starting to, swing back the other way a little bit. And, I think that's also why it's so important to get these type of blood tests done, so that you're not just taking random vitamin D just to take it because you think you need it. And I think this is where somebody like myself comes into play, where we can look at what somebody's eating, look at how they're digesting, because that's going to be a huge issue as well.
Absolutely.
Look at all these blood tests. Look at their vitamin D levels. We have something called bone markers, which look at bone turnover. Look at all of this information and then come up with a personalized plan for that person based on their needs. And I think that's really, really important, other than just saying, oh, go do some exercise and take a calcium supplement, because, for 99% of the people, that isn't what they need. And
And
when you
yet it's
talk
what they're
about,
told when they go to their doctor, because that's just the standard direction from the doctor.
Mhm,
Do you run
mhm,
those lab tests yourself, or do
mhm.
you have them run the labs at a doctor and then come and see you?
They can do either. They
Okay.
can do either.
Okay.
Because I'm not a medical doctor, I
Mhm.
can't bill the insurance for those, so they
Right.
would pay out of pocket for those. So I do tend to have them try and get them from their medical doctor,
Right.
where their insurance will call it. But some doctors won't run them because, well, most doctors will run a vitamin D, but not all doctors will run like bone biomarkers, those kind of things. But you talk about other nutrients. Another big issue when it comes to osteoporosis is inflammation, and
Mhm.
inflammation causes bone breakdown. So, making sure people are consuming a lot of great anti-inflammatory foods like ginger and turmeric and all of these foods that are known to be anti-inflammatory, fish and fish oils. So all of that's really important too. And again, I think this is where somebody like myself is so important, is because everybody's nutrition is different. And I can look at somebody and saying, wow, you're eating a very inflammatory diet. This needs to change if you want to build your bone health.
Right. And I am in full agreement with you there, because I see that as well with my own clients, and,
Mhm,
run inflammation marker labs looking at omega
mhm,
3s to omega 6s. And it's
mhm,
so easy today in today's world
mhm.
for people to be deficient in their omega 3s simply because their omega 6 intake is so high, because it's in everything, and particularly in processed food. However, they're in everything, whereas the omega 3s are harder to get. And there's
Mhm,
so many benefits to bringing those back into balance for people, not the least of which is bringing down inflammation levels.
mhm.
Even, kids with ADD, ADHD, there's research out there that shows that kids put on a good quality omega 3, and the other group was put on Ritalin, and this was done in the UK. And over the course of a year, as assessed by both teachers and parents, the kids on the omega 3s did just as well
Mhm.
as the kids on Ritalin without any of the negative side effects.
Right.
So before we put, our kids on drugs or turn to drugs ourselves, let's look at nutrition, and let's look at the nutrient deficiencies and where we can bring the body into balance, because so often it's your symptom is a result of the body being out of balance. And we can bring it back into balance. It isn't a magic pill. It isn't going to happen overnight. You didn't get this symptom overnight either. It takes some time. However, it can be done with nutrition and supplementation.
Absolutely.
So I love that you help your clients with that as well. Now, let's dive into the gut microbiome,
Mm.
because that's a big conversation. And I would love you to share how the gut microbiome is impacting our bone health as well.
So I actually coined the phrase the gut bone connection, and I feel like the gut is the missing piece of the puzzle. And I have so many people that come to me and they're eating right, they're exercising, their lifestyle is great, but they continue to lose bone. And they're like, I don't know what's wrong, what's going on. And here's the thing, you can eat the best diet in the world, but if you can't digest and assimilate those nutrients, it doesn't matter. They're not, those nutrients aren't going to any cell in your body. And not only the gut microbiome, but digestion as well. So when I look at, I look at it as the gut system, everything from, digestion starting in the mouth or the stomach through evacuation. And we're supposed to make acid in our stomach. And how many people do you know that are on these acid blocking medications? And so many times they think it's because they are overproducing acid. And yet what I find most of the time, especially in my age demographics, is they're not producing enough acid. And you have to produce acid in the stomach in order to start to break down your proteins, to be able to cleave off those amino acids so that they can be absorbed, but also to be able to dissolve your minerals like magnesium and calcium so that these can be dissolved, so that these can be absorbed. And if you're not making enough hydrochloric acid in your stomach, you're not able to actually fully absorb the key minerals that your bones need. And also the hydrochloric acid in the stomach then stimulates the release of all your digestive enzymes in the small intestine in order to absorb your fat soluble vitamins and all of that. And that's kind of key too, because if people have had issues like gallbladder, I mean, how many women over 50 have had their gallbladder removed? Many, many, many. I think it's 25%.
Wow, yeah.
And you need that bile because you've got to be able to digest your fats and all your fat soluble vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin K2, vitamin A, vitamin E. And so if you're not making enough bile and not being able to digest your fats adequately, you're not absorbing those nutrients. And then if you go down into the lower intestine, into the gut microbiome, these good bacteria in your gut do help with digestion, but they also help to neutralize something called oxalates. And oxalates are a problem, and oxalates are in so many of our healthy foods like spinach and most of your greens. And oxalates bind to calcium so that you can absorb calcium. But in our gut microbiome, in a healthy gut microbiome, we actually have these bacteria that neutralize oxalates. So it's so important to have this healthy gut microbiome. And then if you don't, and you have an overgrowth of the so-called bad or opportunistic bacteria, and you don't have enough of the good or beneficial bacteria, you get something called dysbiosis, which then can lead to inflammation and can lead to leaky gut. And now you can lead to inflammation, which then affects the bones. And the other really important thing about a healthy gut microbiome is it actually produces vitamins like your B vitamins, vitamin B12 in specific, and vitamin K2. So it takes vitamin K1, which we get from our leafy greens, and converts it to vitamin K2 or synthesizes vitamin K2 out of it. So there's just so many reasons why we have to start by having a healthy gut. And again, so many people, I'm sure you run across people that maybe have a bowel movement once a week, twice a week. That's not healthy. And so, just people don't understand that we're supposed to be having bowel movements every single day. So on one of my questionnaires, I always, give them about 10 to 15 questions about gut health. And they're looking at me like, why? I'm like, because it's really important. And so many times I find that that's where we have to start with somebody, is healing their gut and making them realize that it's not normal to only have a bowel movement once a week. It's not normal to have to be taking Tagament or omeprazole or something for acid indigestion every single day. And so many times, these issues can be from things like food intolerances or, other issues like small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, things like that.
And very often triggered initially by stress
Mm-hmm.
and poor sleep, because both of those will break down and kill off our beneficial bacteria, causing that imbalance, causing that dysbiosis. And that when we're in that high stress state, fight or flight, well, we're not in rest and digest. So the body
Right.
can't produce the stomach acid it needs in order to be able to start breaking down the food, et cetera, et cetera. So I 100% agree with everything that you've shared here. And I know so many people, and I've, worked with so many clients on getting them to improve their health. And one of the things they're doing is getting rid of the antacids. And I'm not a doctor either, so I can't take people off their prescriptions. So they need to work with their doctor on it. Yes. However, I address the lifestyle factors of improving their stress, improving their sleep. And, I run labs to look at the gut markers as well to see what is out of balance and supporting bringing it back into balance. And there's so many antacids that you can buy over the counter as well. And people are popping those like candy. And if you read the label, it says you should not be using this for more than 2 weeks at a time. And I've had clients go, husband's been taking that for 5 years. And that's further damaging the gut, as is, a single dose, not an entire course of antibiotics, a single dose of antibiotics is causing damage to the gut. And they were introduced as a life-saving treatment, not to be handed out willy-nilly whenever you go to the doctor and, ask for it. So all of these factors are negatively impacting our gut. And then because we're all interconnected, it has that downline effect of negatively impacting the health of our bones. And Hippocrates said, way back when, over 2,000 years ago, all disease starts in the gut. And I like to say it the other way, all health starts in the gut. And it blows my mind, though, that he knew that and professed that to the people of that time way back then. And they had that focus on their health as a result. And, in our modern era, we tend to think, oh, we have to prove it with science first. We can't just believe what was told beforehand. And however, now it has been proven with science. And so there are no excuses. It's just now getting that message out to enough people, because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
However, once people start to pay attention to their symptoms and seek out the support they need in order to heal, when you're working with someone that's looking at the root, that's what you want, not the Band-Aid approach. Susan is working at the root, which is why she's tracking it back to the health of the gut. When you come in talking about your bones.
So true. And one thing that you were saying that I find I have to kind of really, hit home a lot with my patients is, how many people, again, do you know that sit there eating their lunch at their desk or driving in a car or while they're doing something else? And you were talking about, fight or flight or rest and digest. And when you're sitting at your computer, trying to put together a PowerPoint, presentation or shooting an email off to your boss, you are under stress. And now you're trying to eat at the same time, but everything is in that stress mode. So you're not digesting, there's no blood flow to your stomach, and you're just putting this food in there that's really not doing any good and probably causing a lot of the indigestion and reflux that people are feeling, and the gas and the bloating. So I just really try and hone in on people. Just take 20 minutes in a relaxed environment and eat your meal, because that's going to allow the body to send what it needs to the digestive tract so that you can digest your food optimally.
And again, I agree 100%. And again, people just, they need to know that. So I love that you are teaching your clients this. And as I said earlier, the ripple effect of what they learn, they share with others. Right. And you have no idea how many people you are helping as a result. And I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing, because this education is so important for people to understand how empowered they can be in their health journey.
Well, and I think, unfortunately, the medical profession the way they're taught in medical school is you have this condition, you get this medication.
Mhm.
And, and in a lot of ways, I actually feel sorry for doctors these days. They're having to see a patient every 6 minutes. They cannot educate
Right.
their patients. They're just like, oh, you have osteoporosis, you get this medication.
Right.
And so unless somebody, you know, actually looks up the medication and they're like, wow, I really don't want to take this, I'm going to find an alternative or a natural approach. They don't. They just, and they're just like, oh, well, this is what my doctor said, and this is what they gave me, and here we go. But I do think that people, because of people like you and I who have been doing this for a while and trying to get our message out there, people are becoming more educated
Yes.
about medications and about trying to find an alternative to medications. And there is a time and place for medication. There is no doubt about it. And
Yes.
if I have a patient that, I mean, and I've had them and I've been like, you know what? You're a candidate for medication, because there are some people out there, but certainly even while they're taking a medication, there are things that can be done in terms of bone health to actually aid aid with the medication. And there are studies out there that show that medication and exercise and diet is more effective than just medication alone. So
Right.
there is a time and place for medication, but as much as possible, I do think that we need to look at a more natural route for these things, as you do as well. But here's the other thing is people think of osteoporosis as a disease of the elderly or a condition of the elderly. Osteoporosis starts in our teenage years because as an adolescent, that is when we build the most bone that we are ever going to have. And we build up to the age of about 25, 26 women, 28 in men, and you get to what we call peak bone mass. Then, as you go through, your middle ages and then you go into menopause, it is perfectly natural to lose bone when we go through menopause because for most of our lives, estrogen protects our bones. And when we go through menopause and we get a decline in estrogen, it is natural to lose a little bit of bone. But if you have never gotten to peak bone mass as an adolescent, and now you go into menopause and you start to lose bone mass, it's going to take you right into osteoporosis. And again, if you look at our teenagers, and you can look at both sides. You can look at the ones that aren't physically active and, sit there on their game machines and all that, but also especially our women, our young girls with eating disorders and anorexia that are, running 50 miles a week and not eating anything. They're not going to get to peak bone mass either. So, and on top of all that, the stress that we put our adolescents through these days, and I think, I'm so glad that I'm not a teenager in this world because I feel like the stress that these poor kids go through these days is just crazy. And all of that stress, and like you were talking about, and the cortisol in the gut, and cortisol, as we know, is it breaks down our body. Cortisol breaks down our bones. So these young adolescents out there with the schools these days and the intensity of all of these programs and all the stress that they're under, they're just pumping out cortisol all the time, which doesn't allow them to build that bone and to go to peak bone mass. So one of the things that I would love to do is to get into these, especially these universities that are high stress universities, and start educating our young women about the importance of taking care of themselves. And, it's not just because you want to look good on the outside, you've got to take care of yourself on the inside too.
Absolutely. And again, it all comes back to that self-care that we talked about
Mhm.
earlier and the knowledge. And you're right. A lot of people think, well, that's an old person's disease. I don't need to deal with it now. Everything in regards to our health, we need to focus on throughout our entire life.
Mhm.
And when we do that, we get the longevity that we want. We don't
Right.
wait until we, get to age 70 and go, oh, now I'm going to start looking after my health, because so much of the damage has already been done. So I love the idea of getting into the universities and even the high schools and teaching young women about, how all of this works, because it isn't taught in a way that is practical for them to understand in biology class, for instance. It's so scientific and almost removed from reality in many cases that they don't apply it to self, whereas what you're wanting to teach is something that they can apply to self. So I love that.
Well, and I also think it's important to teach their coaches, because the coaches don't look at those things either. They're just going to run these kids to the ground. And I've seen that happen. Both of my kids were young athletes, and, they don't know the long-term detrimental effects of, pushing these kids as hard as they are. And, and I just remember specifically this one young lady that ran with my daughter. I mean, she was so anorexic, and, nobody took notice of it until she was 80 pounds. And I'm thinking, I saw it all along the way, and I never said anything. It wasn't my place to say anything. And then somebody said, oh, at least we caught it in time. I'm like, no, you didn't.
Yes, exactly. So I love all that you shared here, Susan. Thank you for coming on the show and, educating people and opening their eyes to all of these topics that are interrelated, interconnected to bone health. It isn't just osteoporosis. It's so much more. And I love to ask every guest that comes on the show the same question. And that is, what does "don't wait for your wake-up call" mean to you?
Well, to me, as a bone expert, it means don't wait till you fracture a bone to start taking care of your bones. And as we talked about, your bones may be hidden deep within, and we all know that saying, out of sight, out of mind, but they are the foundation of your body's strength and stability. And if you don't care for them, they will weaken over time. But the good news is that by nurturing your bones, not only are you going to strengthen them, but it's going to benefit your entire well-being. So by investing in your bone health now, you won't have that wake-up call of a fracture later in life. And you'll also be creating a healthier, more vibrant version of yourself from the inside out.
Beautiful. Thank you. And again, so true. Now, if somebody wants to work with you, Susan, how can they get hold of you?
Best way is you can go to my website, nurturedbones.com, or you can just email me at susan@nurturedbones.com. And I work with people one-on-one. I also have a group program that I'll be rerunning again, probably starting the end of January, early February. It's a 6-week program. So that makes it a little bit more affordable for people to do it in a group setting, opposed to just working with me one-on-one. But certainly reach out. I do send out a blog every week, as well as a video blog on YouTube, Facebook. So you can certainly sign up for my weekly newsletter and get lots of information every week.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I have that information all in the show notes here for people. And Susan, as we wrap this interview, is there any last piece of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience? I know you've shared lots already. However, if there's one last piece, feel free to share it.
I think the last piece is again, don't take your bones for granted, because if you do, they will go away. And then again, I think the other thing is just really truly understanding that everything in the body is interconnected, and what you do for any aspect of your health is going to affect all aspects of your health.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I love that. Don't take your bones for granted. Might just have to be this podcast episode title. So thank you again for being here, Susan. It's been a pleasure. I love all that you've shared. And I just want to thank my audience as well for tuning in and focusing on your health, being willing to learn, and listening to this podcast week in and week out as I continue to bring you great information in being proactive in your health in a holistic way. Thank you, everyone, for being here.